I'm Poppy Behrens, publisher of Minico, and we're delighted to have you in the audience today. First off, we'd like to thank the sponsor of today's webinar, Janus International, based in Temple, Georgia. Also, we invite you to visit www.ministoragemessenger.com, where you will find information about the many self-storage products that we publish. Today's presentation should run about 45 minutes, with the remainder of the hour open to questions and answers. We invite you to submit your questions throughout the webinar by typing your question into the question area and clicking send. While we will try to answer as many questions as we can during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar, those that we cannot answer due to time constraints will be answered by way of email after the webinar has concluded. The webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on demand from our archives at ministoragemessenger.com. The topic of today's presentation is an owner's perspective on renovation and door replacement. Our presenters are Glenn Nicotra, founder and managing partner of Atlanta-based City Storage LLC, and Richard Lilly, Southwest Regional Manager for Janus. In today's webinar, Glenn and Richard will discuss the positive effects of renovation and door replacement on the bottom line of your facility. This is an especially important topic given the competitive market we are experiencing in the self-storage industry today. Before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little more about our presenters. As the founder and managing partner of City Storage, Glenn has leveraged 2 decades of development experience in commercial, multifamily, and single-family real estate to create a new niche in self-storage development that reaffirms his commitment to customers, the community, and corporate partners. His portfolio includes City Storage, more than 2,900 family-friendly homes, and several single-family subdivisions in 3 major metropolitan markets. Richard joined Janus International in 2008 as a Southeast Regional Sales Manager, responsible for self-storage sales and service. He was previously employed with Shaw Flooring as a sales representative. Richard was Janus's 2009 Salesman of the Year and is a frequent presenter for the Georgia Self-Storage Association. And now it's my distinct pleasure to turn the presentation over to Glenn and Richard. Good morning, guys. How are you?
Good morning, Poppy, and thank you. This is Glenn Nicotra, and envious to start with such a wonderful image that I'm seeing now on my screen of a store that we purchased in Chattanooga last year or so that, as you can see, was ripe for development. Particularly attractive about this is the previous owner's circa 1980s paint schemes. And in the next slide, I think you'll see an image of a office that might be indicative of this owner needing, or that owner needing self-storage, only to be followed by the next slide, which is demonstrates, perhaps new self-storage roll-up door technology, particularly the horizontal wood siding and integral residential style door. But what you don't see in these images is a piece of property that the market had grown up around within a good par 5 of a major interstate. Within a half a mile, every branded hotel that you could find is located within a mile. It's the largest regional mall of the state of Tennessee, and a couple of miles Volkswagen's and Amazon's new assembly and distribution facility. But this property fit perfect in our value-add acquisition strategy, where we could find a property that was severely undercapitalized. As you can see, just lacked maintenance and capital improvements to remain competitive, and had a non-professional, I didn't say unprofessional, but a non-professional management team in place. And as a result, the occupancy at acquisition was about 50% and paled in comparison competitively to the 2 or 3 stores that we competed against at the time. And not necessarily a challenge, but as a result of this, we were able to purchase the property at a significantly below appraised value. So renovation was part of our strategy to begin with, and a key component of our acquisition strategy, that is. But the next and most important component prior to acquisition was to determine what needed to be renovated, and that it was not what we wanted personally. It's what our customers told us they wanted, as they indicated through their tenancy at our competitors. And what we determined, or was determined at this site, in the next slide, is that there are 5 components of our renovation that the customers said they needed. We needed a new set of wheels. We needed roll-up doors. We needed a good coat of paint, a fresh, new, professional rental office, leasing office. We needed to install an access control system and camera surveillance system, which was non-existent. And beyond the scope of this discussion, there was a demand for climate control storage, so we constructed a new building that's going to open very soon. But the primary goal is really in the middle of this next slide. We needed to increase rental rates because they had not been increased in several years. We needed to increase occupancy, which had not moved in years, and we need to do it in the shortest time frame available. And since we're Atlanta-based and this property being in Chattanooga, a couple of hours up the road, we needed to engage the best to manage that remote development activity. And also equally important is we knew that our tenants, who, as you know, the typical tenant may have come to a facility only every, 3 to 4 times a year at the most. So unlike us that visit our facilities every day, these tenants that show up 3 or 4 times a year really notice changes in the facility. And they would show up and realize that someone might be working on their unit, and it's incumbent on us to make sure we engage someone that knew how to manage that process. And in a competitive environment, Richard Lilly and Janus Industries were in the lead, and we're real pleased to work with them on this site. And I think Richard is prepared to go through his process with you. Richard?
Thank you, Glenn. I think Glenn understood that this process needed to go smoothly for himself and for his current tenants. And below are some of the elements that Glenn had to consider when he undertook this remodel. He had to think about the security he was going to provide, the processes involved in refurbishing this property. He had to think about, was he going to replace doors on all the units, or was he going to replace doors only on unoccupied units, or was he going to do them on all? And how was he going to notify the tenants that this was going to occur, and who would take the liability for opening these units? As most of you probably know, the doors to a storage facility represent about 80% of the facade or the exterior of a facility. And as those doors become faded or damaged, your facility can be perceived as older and in poor condition than others. Perception is reality. And added to the operational issue associated with first and second generation doors, this perception often is confirmed in the customer's mind at the worst possible time during the rental process. And I believe Glenn probably found all this to be true. Some other things to consider if you do pursue a door replacement is when you're doing the door replacement, if your headers or mullion wraps need to be replaced, this would be the most economical time to address these items. We're already, the doors are already being removed, and the mullions and headers are accessible at this time, so I want to consider doing that. If you allow a contractor to perform the work, make sure that they fully measure all the door openings, the components, and they discuss the details of that replacement prior to the start of any project. Traditionally, owners have had to wait for a unit to become vacant. Glenn, in this situation, he wanted to do all the doors at one time. Before doing anything, he needed to verify that his lease agreement allowed him to enter these units for an emergency or maintenance. And if you oversee the replacement of the doors yourself, you need to be willing to accept the possibility of the liability for missing or damaged content. You need to orchestrate and oversee the full process. You need to hire a responsible personnel for security, the moving of the unit content, and the door removal and installation. You need to also make arrangements for all the delivery, the unloading, and the disposal of the old doors. Or you can hire a qualified and experienced contractor to perform all these components, and becomes a turnkey operation. And it's always more cost effective to perform door replacement in bulk rather than individual door replacements as they become vacant. Your tenant should be notified on the upcoming door replacement. You need to mail a letter to them, let them know that in 2 months, 3 months, whatever you decide, that their door will be replaced. You also can put a sticker on every door that basically says, this door is going to be replaced in X amount of months or weeks. You can be present when we open your unit. This is an example of a sticker that you could put on a door. So removing the lock. In order for the customer to use their current lock, you would remove the old lock, put it in the unit, and this process minimizes complaints, and it also just shows consideration on your part towards the customer. The latch would simply be cut, and then the lock removed and placed in the unit. Surveillance. Every step of the door replacement process should be videotaped. This procedure verifies that all details with the process are done the correct way. Typically, a video camera is placed in front of the unit far enough back to capture the entire unit plus the side of the unit as the contents are being removed. The camera operation should be overseen at all times, and this is typically performed by security personnel. You need to document everything. It's recommended to have a security guard or another independent third party who will log and monitor the entire process. That person can be the camera operator. The log should contain the security guard's name, the building number, unit number, time that it was open, time it was closed, summary of items moved, and then any damages before or after moving. In addition to videotaping, still photography is recommended. Again, this is just to document the tenant's belongings prior to anything being removed and immediately before the new door is closed. All of these steps are simply to protect you, the owner, from claims. So we're replacing the door. Obviously, tenants like to pack as much stuff in a unit as they possibly can, and it's a lot of times necessary for us to move belongings out of the unit for us to put the door up, and you need to make arrangements to protect those belongings once they're outside the unit as well. So the new door is up, and you would put on a new house lock. It's placed on the door, and the keys are given to the security guard, who places them in a sealed envelope, much like a FedEx envelope, where you have to tear it to get it open. The time and the date are recorded, and the security guard signs off on the job. The security guard then gives that sealed envelope with the new keys to the office manager, and this signed and sealed envelope proves that no additional access has been made to that unit. Again, this protects you against claims. So I'm sure a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, so give me an example of what a door replacement would cost. So this is a true example. I'm not sure what part of the country this actually happened, but it's 128 doors were replaced at a cost of $27,442. Assuming that you participated in componentized depreciation, your annual depreciation would be $3,920, and with an effective tax rate of 30%, your net income offset is $27.44 per year. If you increase rent at just $5 per unit, that's $640 a month, or $7,680 a year, with a 30% effective tax rate. Your net income increase is $5,376 per year. You add those together, and you get a little over $8,000 per year that you're saving, which means that you pay the door cost back in a little over 3 years. And even if you don't take any depreciation, you pay back the doors in right at 5 years. So that just gives you an example of what it would cost and then how long it would take to actually pay for the doors. Each of you probably have your own level of construction expertise. Many of you will choose to do your own facility renovation projects. If you do, plan on hiring an outside contractor to complete your door replacement. Make sure that you verify all aspects of the company's experience before allowing them to complete the project. And don't reinstall open barrel, live axle doors, or you'll find yourself in the same boat again. Thoroughly investigate the proposed door company's warranty, their paint type, operational and maintenance details, as well as customer service reputation. The advantages, I think we all can agree that an attractive and functional facility has advantages and benefits. You increase rentals, you increase your occupancy, your tenant retentions go up, you've got greater curb appeal to keep up with the competition, you reduce your claims due to poorly operating doors, and you can save up to 20% on insurance rates due to site improvements. And now I think you can see Glenn's finished product, and I'll let Glenn take it from here.
Thank you, Richard. And it's finally good to get those other images off my screen. But Richard, you're right. Our current tenants, some of whom had not been to the site and certain one or two times over the past years, wondered if they were at the same place. They raved about the improvements. Our new customer traffic, drive-by traffic, noticed city storage and finally stopped in. And the current tenant base was proud to refer their friends and family to where they store, whereas before they may have been a little reluctant to do so given the presentation. But as you can see, the newly renovated office, which is really a couple of 10 by 20 units that were behind those green doors that you saw in those other units, were converted to what is a reasonably attractive and appropriately designed office space for a facility of this quality. And in the next image, those green doors and wood panel doors were replaced with storefront doors, as you can see in this image. But as I said, the benefits to our current tenants, they were fairly impressed. They were glad to refer their friends and neighbors. And new drive-by traffic was not reluctant to visit us when they needed storage. And in the next slide, it's verifiable, Richard, what you just said, that our occupancy rates in fact increased about 10% within the following 6 months. And in fact, we were able to increase street rates or increase lease rates to existing customers almost immediately. And it was an easy move because the improvements were tangible. And as I said before, referrals came in a lot more freely from our existing customers. And as a side note, this being a key value add strategy being a key component of our growth, this site serves as a benchmark or as an image or that others that are interested in doing business with city storage can see a before and after example of how a renovation takes place. And I was asked to sum up, obviously very briefly in 4 bullet points, for those that are interested in renovating potentially. First and foremost, as Janice was the best person to perform this exercise. They had a full service product and service for installation throughout the security components, the noticing, the locks. Now, we've had good experience with Janus doors on our development projects. We're primarily, as I said before, a new development group, and we have great experience with the Janus door. So the product we had a lot of confidence in. We were most concerned about the service side. It's real easy to overanalyze a renovation. You either need to decide to do it or not, and once you make the decision to renovate, you need to to move on, because every day that you move along with your investment and in a subordinate competitive position, It's lost dollars, but on the same term, it's easy to overinvest in a renovation. We constantly remind ourselves that what we offer in terms of our product and service is what our customers want, not what we may personally want at that location. And I was asked about the capital structure. Every capital structure is different. Every investment analysis might differ from one owner to the next. But in our case, we chose to avoid debt to fund these improvements and went to longer-term, more patient equity. Not that both certainly have their respective costs, but you get an invoice in the mail every month for debt, and that may not be the case for equity. And Poppy, thank you again for allowing me to participate in this, and I want a belated thank you, Poppy, if you will, for the 2009 Facility of the Year Award that we earned for our downtown Atlanta project for construction. And if I failed to mention that to you, certainly want to do that for again. Poppy?
I'm here. Thank you very much, Glenn, for that. It was an exceptional facility, and we were honored to name it as one of our Facility of the Year winners.
Yeah, Glenn, I appreciate you being on here, and I want to thank all of you guys for attending. We'd also, as an offer from Janice, we're offering all viewers to this webinar a complimentary site evaluation for your doors, hallway components, overall facility conditions. Just mention that you attended this webinar. Again, I appreciate you guys being on here.
All right, I think we are ready for questions, and we actually have quite a few of them. Let's see. Hang on, let me hold on one moment here. Okay. How long does it take to replace one door?
I'm assuming that's removing the door. I mean, a lot of variables. I mean, if the unit's empty, you know, a team of 2 guys, it would take them 10 minutes to take a door down and put a new one up, 15 at the most. If the unit's occupied and they've got to move, you know, belongings out of it, then, you know, you need to factor in that time. So, you know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes at the most.
Okay. Next question. Please clarify the alternative type of door to open barrel live axle.
Say that again. The alternative to an open barrel live axle.
Yes.
Well, it would be the 3rd generation door with a fully enclosed barrel, with the curtain or the door rolls up around that barrel, and then housed in that barrel or drum are 2 springs that are pre-greased, and those springs are tightened simultaneously on one side of the drum with a tensioner. That would classify a 3rd generation door.
Okay, next question. Does the price to replace the doors include removing items from the front of the unit?
You know, it's almost like an a la carte menu. You can choose. You could contact us and say, hey, all I want is the doors. That would be, you know, one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum could be, as Glenn did, you know, a turnkey operation where it is, you know, we provided the security guard, we provided the video camera, we provided the dumpsters, we removed the doors, we removed the belongings from the unit. So, I mean, and there's points in between those that, you know, you could choose from. So, yes, we certainly can include in our quote the price to remove the belongings from the unit.
All right, wonderful. Let's see, next question. Do I correctly calculate all-inclusive project costs of $214.39 per door replacement times 128 doors? Not quite sure on that one.
Yeah, I don't know where they're getting the two. What is it? Repeat that again.
$214.39 per door replacement.
It sounds like they have gotten a quote from us.
Richard, I think in that slide there was a gross number that you offered in the example, and then there was the example included 128 doors. I believe it was just a math exercise.
Yeah, okay. I encourage that. I'm sorry that we can't answer that. Please contact us, and we'll be more than willing to clarify that.
All right. Next question is, what is the difference between first generation and second generation doors?
Well, I'm going to have to say that was before my time. I started with Janus in 2008. I believe first and second generation are. I believe first generation had one spring. They didn't have an enclosed drum, and they had one spring. I think second generation, they're still open. There isn't an enclosed drum, but they have two springs on some of their doors. But don't quote me on that. But I do believe that is the difference in a first and second generation.
Okay, and we're back to the figures. Was the 27,442 example for 128 doors the actual for Glenn's project? If not, what did the example provide?
Yeah, that wasn't for Glenn's project, and I don't know what that provided. It wasn't my job. It was in another part of the country. Yeah, I don't know what that included. But again, let us come out when we'll give you that person a quote. We'll clarify a quote for them.
All right. Next question. Doors seem to be handled easier than wall panel replacement. What are the pitfalls specific to wall replacements?
I'm assuming they're talking about partitions between the units?
Yeah, I think that's what they're talking about.
What are the pitfalls? I don't know that there are pitfalls. Glenn, do you have any?
How difficult is it to do that? I guess maybe.
Oh no, no, not at all. I mean, honestly, we're doing a lot of that when an owner wants to replace their doors. They also are realizing that their unit mix may need to be tweaked, and they're asking us to. We're seeing a big push towards some smaller units. So, they may. They're taking some of their larger units and converting them into smaller ones while we're out there replacing doors. So, no, it's not an issue at all.
All right. Next question is, Richard, do you get much resistance from tenants when replacing doors on occupied units?
It varies on if you communicate with your tenants. Then, they're informed. They know what's coming. They're not surprised by it. So it all depends on the amount of communication that you have with them. But no, we have not run into any resistance at all. But then again, we communicate with them, and we make sure that it's not a surprise to them.
Okay, I believe this next question would be for Glenn. What was the biggest obstacle you had to overcome in renovating your facility?
Well, just the decision, the go or no-go decision. Once we determined that it was to the economic advantage of the property, and we were comfortable with that and made the decision, that was a peak point in overcoming an obstacle. After that, I have to say that the process was rather painless. And Richard, I want to echo what you said. We did consider the a la carte menu that Janus offered us, that we do have development construction capability in-house. But given the short duration that the renovation process is engaged in any one customer's room or unit, which is a very personal and private space, I might add, their belongings are in there. They're very protective of that. We thought it best to have one third-party, non-owner entity involved in the entire process.
All right, next question is for Glenn. How much was the total turnkey cost, and how many doors did you replace?
Well, we replaced 226 doors, and and it was just doors. This facility was the old first generation cast in place tilt up concrete exterior walls, so there were no side panels or headers and the like. It was strictly door replacement, turnkey. And I promised Richard that I would not divulge the fact that we probably overpaid for this, but Richard and I have known us a long time, so he knows I'm taking that in jest. But I echo what Richard said. It's such a unique property by property menu-driven operation. It's really best to get your own numbers. But I will say we talked to 3 groups, Janice included, about doing this process, and Janice was by far the most competitive.
All right, next question. What is the typical size of the smaller units?
Well, on our site, the smallest was a 5 by 5, 25 square foot unit, which had on our case, uniquely, a 3-foot, I think it was a 3-foot roll-up door, ours being an external drive-up facility, Richard.
All right. You mentioned it is less expensive to replace doors in bulk rather than onesies, twosies. Why is that?
It's just simply we're already out there. Shipping cost is one reason. Mobilizing crews, having to a lot of them are from out of state, so they're having to stay in a hotel, and we're having to build that into the cost. It's just economy of scale. It's simply like anything else. The more you buy, the less expensive things are per unit.
All right. Do you suggest changing your unit mix during the renovation process?
If you feel, if you feel that your unit mix needs to be changed, that would be the time to do it. Don't simply change your unit mix because we're changing the doors. It's more economical to have your unit mix change while we're out there.
All right, wonderful. That wraps up our questions for now. If you do have any additional questions, now would be the time to key them in, and Richard and Glenn will be happy to respond to those after the webinar has concluded. We'd like to thank everyone for attending today, and we hope you've enjoyed today's webinar. You will be receiving an email shortly with the link to the archived presentation and a special offer for our Construction and Renovation Handbook, so make sure you watch your inbox for this email. And last but not least, we hope you'll join us for our next webinar, which is scheduled for April 13th, presented by commercial real estate investment expert Peter Ingersoll. The topic will be Rent Growth Races Against Time Before Interest Rates Rise. To register, please visit our website at ministoragemessenger.com. Thank you again for attending. Thank you, Glenn and Richard, for a wonderful presentation. And everyone, have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Bobby.
Thanks, Bobby.